Hey, I'm just quickly jumping in here before we get into today's conversation. If you're enjoying the podcast, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Click that little bell button to get notified when the new episodes come out. And if you'd like to support Paramount Importance even further, please check out our website, paramountimportance.com. We've got some awesome merch there. They've got these cool shirts, these cool hats, all environmentally friendly and the highest quality we could go. It generally helps us keep on doing what we are doing, spreading the word of science, inspiring a whole bunch more people. It really helps us out. But without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Let's go. Paramount Importance. Welcome back to Paramount Importance.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be back. It's been a while. So much has happened. And yeah, I'm keen to continue to buzz about bees with you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been, I think, 7 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, since
You're old.
Well, you've accomplished so much, and I think we've really seen a huge cultural shift, I think, throughout Australia with like the people really changing their garden landscapes. Even we're going to talk about a little bit later about even government potentially changing policies, or at least the environmental planning and what they're putting verge side. I'm assuming is a lot of it's from your research within the native bees, particularly in terms of people though. One of the biggest impacts I've seen is with my mum. So she's an avid gardener. Like she's massive gardens, massive front garden, back garden, side garden. And like she's out there every single day, morning and afternoon. And so her garden was very precious to her, and she's completely reshaped it, changed it from the podcast from you, which when she first came across you, to then following your story. I think I just said to you before that she got like the biggest fan, or one of those fan badges on Facebook, because she's just like follows you and just listens to everything you're doing, as well as Sabrina Hahn as well. And yeah, so she's changed her English style garden into a native garden. So you've made waves through the Australian public with the gardens and all that with your research, which has been a phenomenal story from what we first talked about, which was when it was like during your PhD, to everything that you're happening now. So again, well, thank you for coming on again, and let's dive deep into this.
Yeah, no,
into your research.
that really, makes me feel very special. And yeah, it's like people like your mum that, they reach out to me and they say, oh, like I've changed my garden, I'm seeing native bees now. And that makes me really happy. Like the little messages that people send me on Instagram or Facebook, that means so much to me. Yeah, it's been phenomenal. And yeah, I call those people that, love bees and have made changes beeple. So I love my beeple. Perfect.
Yeah. I can imagine just being able to see the impact from research would be just so like heartwarming. And there's not, without saying, there's a lot of research that does happen that doesn't have major impact. Like you hope it does, but yours is definitely done. And so I think, I'm going to jump straight in to why or how important is having native bees in our environment?
Yeah, so native bees are just like such amazing components for biodiversity. When I started my PhD, I didn't even realize how many there were, and we still don't know how many there are. But yeah, there's just, an incredible number. We estimate there's over 20, I think the latest estimate is 23,000 species of bees in the world. And in Australia, we estimate there's over 2,000 species, and we're still finding species. So that amazing component of biodiversity, and many of them, across the world, in whatever region you are, they're often, endemic to your area. So unlike honeybees, which are everywhere, the native bees, some of them are really localized. Other ones have broader distributions. So they provide you with, I guess, like a sense of place and, part of your indigenous biodiversity. Some of them are crop pollinators, but most of them have co-evolved with our native wildflowers. So they're the principal pollinators of wildflowers, which make, a place distinct. Here in Western Australia, this is a biodiversity hotspot, and people come across the globe, across Australia, to see our wildflowers. Our wildflower season is incredible. And many of the wildflowers are found nowhere else in the world. Lots of the pollinators are bees, but there's also other pollinators like wasps, beetles, flies. But yeah, bees are often like really important pollinators, so they pollinate the wildflowers. But then I also think, I get asked the question all the time in a different way that you asked it, but I usually, get asked, like, what would happen if bees go extinct? And the interviewer is hoping that I say, like, food supplies will just stop, humans will go extinct, etc. As I said, there are other pollinators. And when it comes to native bees, some are super important pollinators and some aren't great pollinators. In Australia, as well as some other parts of the world, there are bees that swallow pollen and they don't have pollen collecting hairs, which are called scopae. So they probably aren't great pollinators because they swallow the pollen and then don't transfer that much. But, I think we need to stop focusing on why should we save this species because what it does for us. And it seems like working on bees, that's always the impetus. And it's weird because no one that works on koalas, for example, they're not like, if koalas went extinct, humans would go extinct or, some other aspect the whole ecosystem would unravel. But people still invest in koalas and love koalas. So I wish we could start loving bees for the fact that they are, a unique product of evolution, a part of our ecosystems, biodiversity, and, part of that amazing fabric of life, rather than we should save this species because it pollinates this crop and what it does for us.
They would have other roles in the ecosystem too, I would assume, like whether it's part of the food web or...
Yeah. So some things eat bees, a lot of things parasitize bees. So there's lots of wasps and flies that parasitize bees. Some bees parasitize bees.
What?
Yeah, so there are these bees called kleptoparasitic bees and sometimes called cuckoo bees, and it's evolved independently in numerous lineages. The one that people most know about are the thyreus, and these parasitize the amygdala, which are, the blue-banded or teddy bear bees, and they are stunning, these thyreus. They are often blue and black. Thyreus nitidulus, which is on the east coast, is like a metallic blue and black. The one here, Thyreus warrenensis, is like a light sky blue with black spots. And there's Thyreus in other parts of the world. Then we've also got the coleoxys, which parasitize the maker chili. And yeah, what these bees do is they don't forage for nectar and pollen for their babies. They instead find the nest of a host, lay their egg in the host nest. Their baby hatches out, kills and probably eats the host baby, and then eats the nectar and pollen. So yeah, there's such an array of lifestyles among bees.
Like the cuckoo bird.
Yeah.
Hence the name, I'm assuming then.
Yeah.
Wow.
And as I said, it's evolved independently a number of times in different lineages of bees. So there's not just like one cuckoo bee. It's like different families, and they parasitize different hosts. So yeah, really, really fascinating, and it shows that not all bees are like all living in harmony, etc.
Yeah. So carnivorous bees in a way.
Yeah. I mean, the adults eat nectar, but the larvae, eat nectar and pollen that the host put in. But yeah, they probably killed the host baby as well.
No way.
Yeah.
And so the mother or father would be nurturing as well. Are they technically larvae, or what are they?
So they lay their eggs inside there. They lay their eggs inside mainly solitary bee nests. Like there are some that are
semi-social. So the bees only having one baby?
They potentially lay them in numerous nests. Okay. But these nests, the parent doesn't go back and feed them. So the parent has no idea. They put the nectar and pollen in, lay the egg. They think it's all safe. Lots of native bees actually never see their babies. They just put the food in and close the door, essentially.
Yeah. Are these in the ground nests or? So
the thyreus parasitize the amygdala, which are ground nesting, but then the coleoxys, cavity nesting, above ground nesting, and there's Phesodes. Over in other parts of the world, there's different parasitoid bees, and some parasitize nests in the ground, other ones above ground, pithy stems. Such a fascinating facet of bee biodiversity.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. There's been a big theme of parasitology or the evolution or life life histories, life cycles of parasites in this podcast. Like we've talked to a few different parasitologists or like other researchers, and then they've come up with this life history strategy or life strategy, and it seems to be it's a very successful strategy.
It is, yeah.
That's why I guess it's evolved in multiple different species. But yeah, I had no idea that also bees were in that. So that is crazy. What are some of those life strategies that are also different apart from parasitology types? Because there's quite a few different ones and very unique behaviours within the native bees throughout the world.
Yeah, that's what I love about native bees is that they've got, such an array of life history strategies. So you've got the parasitoids, they're often called kleptoparasitic. So klepto means stealing, and so they're stealing the food of the host. And then we've got like solitary bees that the female gathers nectar and pollen, puts it in a nest, and the nest could be below ground or above ground, and different ground nesting bees have different substrates they prefer. Above ground, some like make their own nest by chewing holes. Other ones rely on holes created by, like, for example, wood-boring beetles. Then you've got ones that nest in cavities like feral Apis mellifera, or where they're native, wild Apis mellifera, the honeybees. Here in Australia, we've got the Meliponini, sometimes called sugar bag bees. Meliponini are also in other parts of the world, like Indonesia, for example. And yeah, they nest in like little cavities as well. And the honeybees and the, stingless or Meliponini sugar bag bees, they are eusocial. So you've got a queen and then all her daughters are the workers. And in between these two extremes of completely solitary and this advanced form of sociality, you've got a whole range of sociality. So some native bees will share a nest burrow, but they've got their own nest chambers, and other ones will share a nest burrow.
Kind of like suburbia, and then they've got their own houses.
Yeah, definitely. So they all sort of like live in their little suburb, but do their own thing. And then other ones, they will share a nest burrow and also cooperate by, for example, guarding the nest entrance, so that some will forage while they'll guard the nest entrance and defend it from parasitoid wasps, for example. There's lots of parasitoid wasps. And then you've got some that actually live in the same nest and also feed their offspring together. So it's a whole range of sociality and different strategies that they've evolved. And even when it comes to mating, I love bee mating strategies. I've got a whole show about it called The Birds and the Bees, which is a sci-com comedy circus performance, and which I've been performing at fringe festivals. And the mating strategies of different bees are like incredible. Some males will patrol flowers, and so resource guarding and wait for a female to come. Other ones will chase females. Some will wait for virgin females to come out of nests. Then I wrote a paper about this bee, Xanthesma brachycera, where the males, they will leck. So lecking is something that, like, I remember studying in birds or something, and all the males will sort of congregate together. And what I found these bees do is they choose a patch of like open sandy area, and there'll be like hundreds, and they'll just fly back and forth. So it's this target for females to see and know where the males are. So yeah, all these different mating strategies and behaviors. When it comes to honeybees, for example, the queen, she'll go on a nuptial flight, and all the drone males will like be able to smell her and come and mate with her. So
they mate with multiple males and just one becomes successful? Or?
No. So they mate with multiple males, and then they store the sperm, and then they're able to like sort of choose which sperm gets released. And they live. The queen honeybees live for up to 5 years. So they go on this one mating flight and mate with multiple males, and then store all the sperm to fertilize their thousands of eggs over 5 years, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So there's so many different. It's crazy. Bees, or insects, I guess in general, is kind of other crazy insect behaviors.
Yeah.
But yeah, bees are wild. I
think it's so sad that like we just get told about honeybees, which they're I find their eusociality, etc., really interesting, and, how they communicate and forage. But it's sad that this one bee dominates everything that we hear about bees, and like the majority of native bees in the world just don't get representation. And, whenever I go and talk to kids or adults really, they're like, oh yeah, bees are young black insects. They make honey, they sting you, they live in hives. And it's like, oh, that does not apply to most bees.
No. And they're not that good for the environment either. Am I correct by saying that?
Yeah, so they're not. I mean, depends what environment you're talking about. So where they're native to, the wild bees, they've evolved with the European flora. There are even, in Europe, problems with overabundance of honeybees, because when you've got too much of one species, like we can see this even in Australia with native minor birds, when they're native, but they've proliferated so much that they've outcompeted other birds. But yeah, here in Australia, like honeybees are really important crop pollinators. They're the main crop pollinators of most things. Some native bees will like contribute to the crop pollination, but if we had no honeybees, which never would happen, like that's not going to happen. But if in like this weird apocalyptic scenario, all the honeybees got wiped out, crop production would, decrease a lot. But we also would probably do hand pollination or breed varieties that need less, biotic pollination. But when it comes to the environment in Australia, yeah, honeybees are not good for the environment. They haven't evolved with our wildflowers. They can, pollinate some, but our native insects have co-evolved, thousands of years in these ecosystems, and the honeybees can outcompete these native pollinators. They, alter the pollination networks, and that was something that I studied during my PhD. They change the structure of pollination networks. They make them more generalized. For bird pollination systems, they can definitely disrupt the pollination of those plants because they forage very differently to birds.
So they're like taking the pollen out that the birds then don't get? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, so and also the way that there can be less efficient transfer of pollen and over different distances in different ways. And honeybees often they'll forage on, say there's a plant with lots of flowers, they'll sort of go from one flower to the next on the same plant and then go to a different plant. So there's a lot of selfing there. And they can also, damage the stigma of some plants.
If, say you had a hive of the honeybee at your house or something, would it be wiser to get rid of it or keep it there?
So from an environmental perspective, I would say not have them. But I know that people get really attached to their honeybees. So I'm more like, if someone is thinking about getting a hive for their backyard, no, just don't. If you've already got a hive, don't get any more. Definitely take courses in how to prevent swarming so we don't have more feral honeybees in the environment, which add extra issues because they take over hollows that so many animals, native animals require, like birds, parrots, owls, ducks, and possums need.
And there's a very limited of them because we've got rid of all the old trees. So
yeah,
it's a roll-on effect to more or exacerbating another existing problem.
Exactly.
Which is, we've got very limited hollows, and then there's all the, especially the cockatoos and all that. They're struggling to find nesting hollows, and then if those very few are then taken over by bees, and
they can even take over hollows that have chicks in them and kill the chicks. Like I've seen that before, which is absolutely devastating.
Really?
So yeah, honeybees, they are not they've been put out there as the symbol of the environment, but they certainly aren't. They're the symbol of livestock. They're the symbol of agriculture, but not of the environment. And it's really sad that there's this messaging that they are absolutely crucial for our environment, etc. But yeah, our environment was fine before honeybees came. It's going to be fine if they weren't. But there's a lot of, I guess, media honeybees are going to decline drastically now that Varroa is here, and they could go extinct. They've not gone extinct anywhere in the world, and they're definitely not going to go extinct in Australia. If they did, we could just import more over. There's just so many honeybees. Globally, the number of honeybees are increasing. So,
right.
yeah, I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess the number of people that have got their own hives to make honey and all that that's like kind of huge as well now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, crazy that it's having a negative impact. Like there's still so much like positive news, like, oh, we've got like, the honeybee out there, as you were just saying, and then we're losing those, a lot of the native honeybees, or they're out competing from that. Is there any native bees to the southwestern Australia that produce honey, or is it only the honeybee?
Yeah, only honeybees in southwest WA make honey. The Meliponene, which are the sugar bag bees, they make small amounts of honey. They're up north in WA. They're also in the NT, Northern Territory, and Queensland, New South Wales, down to Sydney. And there's one colony that they keep in Canberra, ACT, and then move it during winter because it's too cold. But it's there as a sort of like demonstration sugar bag bee hive. But it's too cold for like your average person to keep them there. So they do make honey, and they've been part of like Indigenous cultures because, humans love honey. Like it's been part of our evolutionary history. There's this really cool theory that I read, I think it was by Thomas Sealing in one of his books, that honey could have helped humans develop their big brains and sort of that interaction effect, because finding honey involves like, cognition. You need to see the honeybees, follow them. And then there's this like amazing thing in Africa where they have this bird, and it like they call to it and it calls to them, and it will lead them to the honeybees. And then the people take down the honey and they get the honey, but the bird wants the larvae. So it's this cool like cooperation between this bird. And so clearly, honey and humans have been like together for a long time. There's cave paintings dating back, I think, like 11,000 years. We did this paper on the representation of bees in art throughout history, and that was really fascinating, and just the ways that bees are being represented throughout art. So bees have been like a big part of humans, not just honeybees, but where there's the native bees, the sugar bag bees. So it's mainly the ones that make sugar that have been sugar bag or honey that have been part of human cultural history. But we see in South America, where there's also Meliponene, the Mayans, they had like a goddess or a god that was like based on a bee, which is really cool. Yeah. So it's there's been representations of bees like in Egypt as well. So this long-standing history between the bees that make honey, and it's not just honeybees. So in these other regions of the world, the Meliponene have been important culturally as well. It is weird that in southwest WA there's no Meliponene, because it's the same sort of latitude as Sydney, and we've got so many flowering resources over most of the year. So most of the Meliponene are active the whole year, so they need flower resources the whole year, whereas lots of other native bees are only active for a short period, mainly spring and summer. But we do have plenty of flower resources, and I always want to know, were they ever here? Like I've talked to some Aboriginals, and some of them have said, they were here, and others said no. Some even say they're still here, but there's no records of them. So it's really hard because the other ones say no. We don't have good, records of what was here when, first Europeans came. So, it's hard to know whether
gut theory on that? Is that they were never here, or they were here? And
I really don't know. And it's something I really want to know because, what happens if they were here and maybe they were like out-competed by honeybees or something? Because it seems strange that they are up north and they haven't come down here, and there's no barrier like
in like, if you're looking at like functional ecology, is there a niche that is the same as like another species of native bee that's sort of endemic to here, and there's just no competition? Okay.
There's no no other eusocial bees.
Eusocial?
So that big colony with the queen of workers.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So I am not sure, but it's something I'd love to know. And it's really strange though, and a bit ironic that we aren't allowed to bring sugar bag bees here to Southwest WA, but anyone can have a hive of Apis mellifera, an introduced species. So it's very strange that honeybees are, under the radar when it comes to introduced invasive species. You can have one even though it's invasive.
Yes, because people get something out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's more tipping towards politics
than
any other.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the native bees. They've got a wide range of morphologies too. So how can a general public person, because I remember when I first met you and talked about native bees, I thought a lot of the things I was seeing in the garden, or these flying insects, were flies, and some were flies, but a lot of them were native bees. So how can someone go out and be like, oh, that's a native bee? What are they like looking for? How can you tell the difference between, say, a native bee, a wasp, a fly, and a midgie?
Yeah. So midgies are very small and bite you. So they're very tiny little, very tiny little black things, and will fly around you and bite you. Our native bees are a lot more shy, so they're not going to come up to you and land on you most times, and definitely not try and bite you or sting you. They just want to do their own thing, unlike flies, who love me way too much. I wish native bees came to me like flies did.
Yeah. Would make catching them a lot easier, right?
Yeah. So flies are pretty easy to distinguish from bees and wasps because they only have one pair of wings, and they're different. The thorax and abdomen seem more squished together in a way. So it's less distinct, the thorax, which is the middle part of the body, and then the abdomen, which is the last part. Whereas with bees and wasps, there's more of a waist, especially in wasps, and in some wasps it's very, very distinctive. Flies have big bulgy eyes and short straight antennae usually, and if they're hairy, they tend to be more little bristle hairs. The bombillidae, though, they're really cool flies. They're sometimes called bee flies, but some of them are parasitoids of bees.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they can be fuzzy, but they tend to have much more of a hovering flight as well, and very thin, spindly legs.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to bees and wasps, it's harder because wasps and bees are very closely related. Bees are essentially vegetarian wasps. So
right.
Yeah, they evolved from a lineage of wasps, and so some wasps are more closely related to bees than they are to other wasps.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Distinguishing them, so wasps tend to have antennae lower down on their forehead. That's a key one, and the abdomen tends to be more constricted from the thorax. They tend to be more jittery, more anxious, they've had a lot of coffee. So it is hard because when you what is a bee? What do they look like? Well, there's such a diversity. They range from 2 millimeters to 2.5 centimeters. They can be really fuzzy or not fuzzy at all, a whole range of colors. So it is a bit hard.
How common would it be to be seeing some of these native bees in, say, if you're in the bush to a urban landscape?
So there's definitely more native bees in the bush than there are in, I guess, someone's garden, depending on what's in the garden. But I guess the great thing about here in Southwest Western Australia, and I think, quite a few other places, is that they still have some bushland interspersed in the city. And I know this doesn't occur worldwide, sadly. Some cities are just concrete, and it's humans, and then nature is out there. But fortunately in Australia and some other parts of the world, we've still got these bushland natural remnants interspersed. And so it's really easy. after this podcast, I'm going to go to some bushland patches around the city of Coburn, which is spelled Cockburn. I just have to say that. I think it's the funniest thing.
I remember when Google Maps used to pronounce where you. Oh, it probably still does. I've just turned it off, but it would pronounce it the way it's spelled.
Yeah. Anyway, city of Coburn, where there's these like little bushland remnants with some Jacksonia, which is a native pea, and native bees go nuts for this. So I'm surveying that, and yeah, like hundreds of native bees will come to this, and this is very suburban area.
So what plants are there that like help? Well, what plants can people plant in their gardens to increase native bees? So it's obviously native plants.
Yes.
But is there particular species of native plants that they can do? And then why should they do it? Is there benefits for them? Because that's, most people only do things if there is benefits to them. I think one of them that you mentioned last time was about tomatoes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So what other plants, what species can people do to plant?
Yeah, so definitely natives because, and this is wherever you are in the world, like your bees have evolved with the plants that are local to that area. And by local, I don't mean like some people get really, I guess, anxious that, I can't get this like local variety that's local to my suburb or state. It's more about like local to your region, so Western Australia. And sometimes even just like native to your country. It depends how big the country is, but it's a lot more about the particular family and its nativeness than I need to get this variety that's only found in my area. Because if bees were so specialized on just that local variety, they would go extinct because like if that variety didn't flower that year, then that's the end of it. So yeah, native plants because they've co-evolved with them in that region. And some plants are way more attractive than others. In Australia, I always say if you're going to get plants for your garden, always make sure you have a Metaceae. So this is the eucalypts, the corymbias, the melaleucas, the leptospermums. And this is like one of the dominant plant families.
They're usually big trees.
They are trees, and trees are great. So we need more trees. And I know not everyone can have trees, but you can get little shrubs. For example, little shrubs of leptospermum. There's also like smaller shrubby Metaceae. So anything in the family Metaceae. If you can have a tree, that is great.
Mum's planted so many trees.
Good.
Yeah, of a lot of eucalypts and different species.
Awesome.
Which is where my mum's house, I should describe to people, is in suburbia, really. And so, yeah, like it's a pretty big garden areas that she's got, but pretty standard to everywhere. And so if you can plant trees, other people can plant trees too.
Yeah.
Is what I was trying to get to with that. So
Definitely.
people can do it.
Yeah. And there's so many other benefits for trees. And yeah, if you're going to plant a tree, plant one that is a native flowering one rather than here in Western Australia, we have so many jacarandas and they are like super popular. There's even a jacaranda festival, but they're exotic and only honeybees go to them. Instead, I think we should be focusing on, for example, my favorite is Corymbia calophylla. This is known as the Mary, and it is gorgeous. It has this, like during summer, this beautiful ruby red sap that just like bleeds down it. It is gorgeous and it glitters, and then when it hardens, it's like rubies, and it's has these like big fluffy creamy white flowers, and you can also get varieties that have like pink or orange, but the main one is this creamy white flowers, and they have these gum nuts that are sometimes called honky nuts, and parrots love them too. Some people think they're a nuisance because the parrots will like eat them and then drop them
and make a mess.
But like that is nature. If your garden is not messy, then what is it?
Yeah.
So I love the Mary, and especially because my research has found that 81 native bee species will visit the Mary. So that is a crazy amount.
Yeah.
So a Mary tree attracts so many native bees as well as other insects and birds. And then native bees, they also go to the marri as well as other eucalypts that have, sap that, resiny sap, and they will collect it for their nests. So that's why, these metaceae are so important, like these, especially these trees, because they get the resin from them. And when they get bigger and older, the little beetles will bore into them and have holes, and then the bees will like nest in the holes. So that's why, trees are whole ecosystems, but not all trees are created equal. And we also, I think, there's a big push, like let's plant trees, and these, I guess, what are they called? Like pocket forests are becoming very popular. But a potential issue with them is that it's like, let's plant trees as densely as possible. And then there's no understory. Like there's also bees that, love flowering on things that flower on the ground. So Jacksonia sericea, which, as I said, I'm going to survey, and the mega chili go nuts for this. This is one that sort of grows on the ground. And so if you've got huge, like very densely packed trees, you're not going to have these, plants that need open spaces. And we also need some patches of like nothing, bare ground, because of those ground nesting bees. So it's about having diversity, diverse strata, so trees as well, some like flourish ones, substrate ones, and then some, mid-level ones too. Something I would love to study is the different foraging heights of native bees. So there has been research that, some native bees will fly up really high in the canopy, especially in rainforest, because if you think of a rainforest, most of it's very like dark,
moist.
Yeah, not really great, ideal conditions for bees. So they fly high up in the canopy. But what about, in these more open environments, these eucalypt trees, they can, when they are allowed to grow to their full height, they can be meters and meters tall. Do bees forage like all the way to the top? Do they have height preferences? Is it like birds? Like when I studied ecology, I think it was like by MacArthur, and it was like one of those seminal papers about resource partitioning, and some birds will forage like low down on the trees, in other words, high up on the trees. And they've done like similar studies with anolis lizards where they like forage on different parts of the tree. Do bees partition flowering resources along the same tree like that? I would love to test that. Get a drone or something and attach like a little collection bag to it and fly at different heights. But yeah, there's so much we still have to know about bees. And so much I would love to study, and so little funding.
Yeah. Across the board, a lot of the times it's very little funding in the nature space, unless it's a very sexy topic, like corals and whales and things sometimes. But and that's a different story.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to. I got sidetracked, but I mean, you probably now know metaceae, great. Flowering trees, native flowering trees are great.
Yeah, so not everyone can plant trees. So is there some smaller shrubs and ones that are relating to tomatoes, or people that can help their own gardens?
Yeah. So if we want some buzz pollinated plants, which only some native bees can pollinate, honeybees can't pollinate them. Buzz pollination has evolved independently numerous times, and it's actually quite common in many native bees can buzz pollinate. Like I often see in things about bees, they're like, oh, buzz pollination is this rare, unique type of pollination. It's actually evolved many times, and many bees can do it, but not honeybees. So that means that buzz pollinated plants are a resource that's free from competition from honeybees, which is great. So tomatoes are a plant that is buzz pollinated, but we've also got native Solanaceae, which is the same family as tomatoes. So we've got bush tomatoes, and other buzz pollinated plants are Dianella, Hybertia as well. So, if there's a Hybertia, which are these big yellow flowers, I always know that there's going to be some Amygdala around. They are fantastic buzz pollinators.
Do you know the common names of those plants?
Yeah, so Hybertia scandens is called snake vine.
Okay.
But I don't know like the common name of the Hybertia as a whole. Maybe it's guinea flowers, I think. But yeah, there's a number of Hybertia species, but the Hybertia scandens, also known as snake vine, is a really favored one, and that's also it can be sort of a groundish one, but it can also be a vine, which is cool.
Okay.
And Then likewise, Hardenbergia, which are in the family Fabaceae, so native peas. Native peas are another great one that everyone should have in their garden because so many native bees will forage on native pea plants and a lot of native bees specialize on the native pea plants. So we've got Hardenbergia, Eutaxia, Divisia. Some of the Divisia are called like egg and bacon flowers because apparently it looks a bit like egg and bacon.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I can see that now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never made that connection. Like I don't look at many plants that deeply, but I can appreciate them. But I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. They're this beautiful, a lot of the native peas are orangey yellow. And there's this idea that like orange flowers or red flowers are not attractive to bees, but that is so not true. Like some of the favorite plants for native bees are red, like red callistemon, which I think has just been reclassified as melaleuca, the callistemon viminalis. So bottle brushes, the red bottle brushes, like heaps of native bees go to them. So don't, select plants based on color, select them based on family or genus.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And I guess also diversity, right? If there's some native bees that specialize in certain, like a lot of people go looking for orchids. Is there bees that like specialize on like only a certain species of orchid or something as well?
Yes and no, in that there are bees that visit orchids, but they don't want to. So what the orchids are cheeky. Most of them don't offer nectar. They mimic plants that do. And for example, we've got the donkey orchids and they mimic some of the native peas. And so the trichocoletes, these are these really cute, very fast-flying native bees. The genus is endemic to Australia and they mainly specialize on native peas. So they're looking for native peas. They see this orchid that's got similar like reflectance, etc., and they go and forage on it. They don't get any nectar, but the pollinia, so orchids, they have their pollen in these like little bag things, and it's really cute when you see a bee with these, like they look like two little balls. They essentially are ball sacks because the pollen is plant sperm. So this little bee with like a little ball sack on its head. It's so cute. And yeah, you can tell that they've been duped into visiting this orchid.
Yeah.
So they only are the main pollinators anyway of the those donkey orchids because they specialize on the native peas. There are some other orchids like the sun orchids that do offer some nectar, and some Lasioglossum visit them. There's some really cool, though, orchid pollination systems where the bees do specialize on them and they're specifically going to them, but not in Australia. In South America, there's these bees in the tribe Euglossini, and they are so pretty. They're like metallic blue, green, purples, and only the males are the pollinators because they go to the orchids to collect the scents and then they use them like cologne, which is so beautiful. So yeah, not only human males like try and attract females with cologne, these male bees do as well. So the orchids don't offer nectar; they offer the scents, and the males go and get them, which is really cool.
Another crazy courting behavior.
Yeah.
There's so many different things. I remember on the last podcast when we did together, you talked about when they're mating and males like caressing the female.
Yes.
As well, like I don't know, that kind of behavior. Like I don't know, you don't see that in too many animals. It's kind of just like
not even in some humans. It's really sad.
yeah, not even some humans.
What happened to romance? They get a leaf out of the bees book.
Yeah, exactly. They should be taking notes.
Yes.
What about government policy? I know this is maybe a boring question to some people, but have you seen a change since your research, since you've started this? Like especially 7 years ago, when we were speaking about this, it was like I've seen a huge change in more general public, and you've done an amazing job of putting the awareness out there and all that with your social communications, science communications on the socials. It's been amazing. Have you seen also a change in policy and in that? Has it, or do we have hope?
So I have some hope. the policy changes or government changes haven't happened at the federal level yet. And I have been emailing them, and it's just like fallen on deaf ears. What's really embarrassing is that in 2016, there was this international coalition formed called Promote Pollinators, and over 30 countries have joined, and Australia still hasn't.
Really?
Like even countries, I think like Nigeria, and these countries, they're putting together like native pollination strategies. In Australia, we haven't. I'm actually working on creating Australian native bee and pollinator strategy, in my spare time. There is what's being formed, a pollination strategy, but that is not the same, because pollination, when it's typically focused on pollinating crops. It's not about conservation. As I mentioned, lots of our native bees aren't crop pollinators, and they might not even be good pollinators. So we're going to neglect the bees that need conservation the most. So there's not much happening at the federal level, but what I've seen, which has been really hopeful, is a lot more at local council, like local government level, which is really great. They've been asking me to do surveys. I've got a meeting soon about like coordinating a pollinator and invertebrate like monitoring strategy. Councils are asking me what are the best plants for native bees. City of Perth, I'm having talks with them, and like Perth is the capital city of Perth.
Or WA,
WA, but City of Perth is getting me involved. But yeah, there's been some really great stuff with local councils, and City of Coburn, they have been restoring areas that were cleared for this like awful Row 8 corridor that was thankfully stopped. And they're looking, as part of that, have asked me to like, what are the native bees that are visiting? Are they able to like come to these restored places? We've done workshops to create well-designed bee hotels to provide extra nesting habitat there. So yeah, it's been really, really great seeing that. Like, I think
so
that
starting
often
from the
happens.
ground
up. Yeah, it would be great to have, more federal government support and, an overarching, strategy for Australia. And as I said, that's what I'm working on. It's not like a government one, but an overarching strategy so that it's more unified, and so that, there's a framework for governments like local council governments or land care groups all across Australia to follow, rather than, lots of people want to help bees, and sometimes the information that's out there on like the most popular websites or whatever isn't correct. So it'd be good to have like an actual strategy that people can go to so that they know they're doing, things that are best for native bees.
Right. What are some of these misconceptions?
Yeah. So one's like putting out water for bees, and that really only helps honeybees. And the way you put out water for honeybees, it's like this really shallow bath with like marbles or something. The animals that need water the most are birds, for example, and they love bathing in them. So if you like, I'm going to just put out these bee water bowls, then you're reducing the ability for birds who really need water to access it. And then, native bees get their water from nectar. So the, bee water bowls are mainly for honeybees, so you're just helping the honeybees. Other things are like, plant, the highest diversity you can. And this is something that, my research challenge. And at first I was like, oh, did I do something wrong? So part of my PhD was looking at what are the main things that make a garden or an area attractive. And I thought the more plant species, the better. And that's like a mantra, right? The higher diversity, the more you get. But when you've got within a constrained area, say a garden, the more different plants you have, the fewer flowers on any one particular species. So if there's a native bee that only specializes, say, on Jacksonia, and you've got one Jacksonia plant, it has like, 20 flowers, that can't really support a population of the bees. So it's better to have, a humped relationship. So not too few flowers, but flower species. But if you have so many flower species that there's just a few flowers per species, then you're only going to support like the generalist bees that, are doing fine, and the specialist bees, probably there won't be enough there to sustain them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's interesting that back in undergrad, like you often see this intermediate disturbance hypothesis or intermediate whatever hypothesis. So there's this intermediate level that's good. And yeah, I found that if you've got too many different plant species, then you actually have fewer native bee species. And it also could be an interaction between having lots of different plant species. That's going to help honeybees more than native bees, and then the honeybees are going to outcompete the specialist native bees. And then also in like a garden setting, often people can, the most easily accessible plant species for many people, they go to like a hardware store or exotic plants. So lots of these high diversity gardens had a lot of exotics. So what I found was most important was the proportion of native plants rather than just diversity as a whole. So that's where like what you plant really matters rather than just plant as many different things as you can.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about bee hotels?
Yeah. So they are really getting very popular for good and for bad. So unfortunately, the most easily available ones in most hardware stores, or, the ones that a lot of people, like organizations, are like, let's do bee hotel workshop and we'll get metal cans and stick bamboo in it. Problem with metal cans is that they can overheat, and the diameter of the holes is really important. So native bees, they need diameters that are like 3 to 10 millimeters. Lots of these bamboo that I see in these hotels are a centimeter. And so the native bees that, my research, I put up bee hotels and of different hole sizes and monitored them. They prefer 4 millimeters to 7 millimeters. And there were very few using the biggest hole diameters of the 10 millimeters. So having a range of hole diameters that are smaller is important. Not having treated wood. And then you've got these ones that have like pine cones or blocks of wood in them, and it's like the native bees won't use them. That's just fluff there. So
Right. Okay.
yeah. So really the best thing you can do is just get a block of native wood and drill some holes in it that are, those hole diameters. I have a book called Creating a Haven for Native Bees, which has information about how to make bee hotels, as well as a list of some of the great plants. The plant list is Australian based, but the bee hotel design is like, anywhere. But yeah, you want to make sure that the hole diameters are correct. And you also want to have fairly long holes, like 10 centimeters.
If they're real deep.
Yeah, because if they're too short, then the bees can't have many offspring along there, and it also increases the risk that a parasitoid will, parasitize the whole nest rather than just a few at the end that they can reach.
Yeah, right. Okay, and do you still have that citizen science project where people can create their own bee hotel and then in a way document what comes there and they can help out your research? Is that still happening?
Yeah, so that's finished, and my master's student actually analysed that data for a master's. But people can totally still take a photo and put it on my Facebook group, The Buzz and Wild Bees. And also in the works, as I said, I'm creating an Australian native bee conservation strategy, and citizen science is going to be a component of that. Citizen science, when it comes to bees, the current citizen science isn't very good because you can't really identify bees by a photo alone unless it's a really good photo, and because there's so many undescribed species as well. So citizen science can't monitor bee populations, even though the current pollinator count is saying it can, but there's been nothing published from it. But what citizen science can do is monitor bee hotels, because it'd be great to know what is using the bee hotel, but just showing that these are the number of nests that are being occupied, of these diameters of these nest closures, can tell us something about nesting success in different habitats, or monitoring climate change, like when are the bees starting to nest? When are they starting to emerge? So that's where it can be really useful. As I said, I love to see this strategy come to fruition, but that's where I think citizen science can be most useful.
Yeah. If you can tap into the bird people or the spider people, they've got those like really good macro cameras and all that. You could potentially start building that database and like the distributions as well. Because like would have seen like with BirdLife Australia how they do those citizen science projects with like I can't remember what it's called, but
birds in your backyard, I think.
Birds in your backyard, yeah. And they like count, and then you can start seeing where the distributions are of these birds and what birds are around. And like, I think there's a lot of people now have quite good cameras. So potentially you could start. Well, I wouldn't say I'm putting everything just on you, but like maybe there could be a citizen science project there to them people wanting to like start counting or looking and then identifying bees. That was something also that came up in the last podcast. Is about you found a potential subgenus of native bee, and I saw the other day that you have described another new species of bee. I'm sure there's maybe been a few, but there was a particular one that was just recently, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Sure. I was so stoked with this one, especially because how much attention it got, because usually new species, especially when they're insects, like might be a bit of local media or something, but like I was getting colleagues from all over the world, news all over the world, like other countries, other languages, tell me about it, that they saw my new species. So it's called Megachile lucifer. Mm-hmm. And it is this cute little megachile bee, and it has 2 horns, only on the female. And so I called it Lucifer because the horns, and I also love the Netflix show Lucifer. And I'm still waiting for Tom Ellis to get in touch with me. Tom Ellis, if you are listening to this podcast, because I loved that show, and I was watching it, while I was writing up the description, and it was my absolute escapism last year. Yeah,
awesome. So Lucifer, the relation is to the devil.
Yes.
So if anyone didn't know, but I'm sure it's a pretty common thing. Have you described many species, or is it just?
So just 2 so far.
Yeah.
Because there is so little funding in taxonomy. So I was very grateful to get a Atlas of Living Australia biodiversity mobilisation grant, as well as a Goldfields Environmental Management Group grant, because I found this native bee in the goldfields when I was surveying a critically endangered plant that had never been surveyed before. And this is another issue. Many of our wildflowers, we don't even know what visits them, let alone pollinates them. So just because something visits a plant doesn't mean it's a pollinator. And so I was doing these surveys, and one of the insects that I found visiting this flower was this undescribed megachile. And I was like, this is really cool. Plus it, visits this critically endangered wildflower. I feel like, if I'm going to invest time and effort into describing a species, then this is going to be one that I focus on. But there's so many other undescribed species that I've found that need descriptions. It is quite a process. Some people think, you can just like take a photo and tell, that's a new species, and just like decide on a name and that's it.
Yeah.
No, you have to because the most embarrassing thing ever would be describing a species that's already been described. So, and a lot of the descriptions are, if they were done 100 years ago, are very hard because there's no photographs, of course. So you just have to sort of figure it out, go to museums, do DNA barcoding, and then write up the description. It's very formulaic, make all these measurements, etc. But naming species is really important, because if you don't name a species, we can't understand its distribution. It can't be put up for listing. There's only 3 species that are currently listed on the EPBC Act, which is our biodiversity conservation legislation. And even those 3 species, they don't have recovery plans. And I'm devastated, because yesterday there was this huge bushfire in one of the bushlands where one of these critically endangered species occurs.
Really?
And it only occurs in a handful of places. And we're not doing anything about it. We're not helping to increase its population or translocate it to other potential areas. So there's a lot that needs to be done to, increase our understanding of how many species we have, like describe them, monitor them, understand what their nesting substrates are. So these 3 listed bee species, we know they're ground nesting because all other species in their genus are, but we've not found the nests. So that's something that, this critical gap. Like if we know the nests, maybe we can artificially create nests, get them to nest in them, translocate them to appropriate areas, especially with climate change or as insurance populations, but none of that's being done. So yeah, it's hard to work in this space because like I love native bees so much and there's so much cool things to discover about them. But at the same time, whilst lots of people are interested in bees, there's very little funding to support this work. There's so much misinformation about bees and how to help them. And yeah, the funding seems to be all going into like an agricultural context. How can we boost bees to pollinate crops rather than how can we boost biodiversity? And, I know that like koala researchers definitely have their challenges, but at least they don't have to be like, well, we need to help koalas because if we don't help koalas, our food supply will decline.
Yeah. Well, there was a few friends when they've done like science to politics or and turn into politics. It's you got to from every time this keeps coming back to the same question is like, what does it benefit? What is the value of this species? And like, as much as like, I think it must be people like the idea of biodiversity and everything, but everyone wants what do we get out of it?
Yeah.
And it's like, how much is this resource valued? Like for protection of Great Barrier Reef, it was like $96 billion. And so, okay, the government then sees, we'll put money into that to restore it. It's obviously got an economic benefit to them. Same with when we've like looked at certain types of estuaries. I think the Peel Harvey estuary has a $20 billion benefit. So
important.
then money goes into that. And then so it's hard. Like I find the same with all these other little small estuaries. No one really cares about it. It's like you have to find the economic benefit a lot of the time, and it's a sad truth. But
or a good narrative. So like Mega Chili Lucifer, it does pollinate this rare wildflower, which doesn't really have an economic benefit. In fact, it's probably like hindering full-scale mining. So the reason why I was serving it was because it's near where mining is going to occur. And so as part of their environmental mitigation, they wanted to make sure that it wouldn't impact this critically endangered plant because it only occurs in this place.
Right.
So what I think native bees are, firstly, they're important for pollinating wildflowers, which bring in like tourism and, ecosystem services, but they can also be indicators of the environment. So as a way of how healthy is our environment. And that's of value to us, like a biodiverse ecosystem. They can also track restoration. So how sustainable is your restoration? If you put plants in and there's no pollinators, well, 10, 20 years ago, like 20 years forward, you're going to have to go and plant them all again because they're not setting seed naturally. So I think there are other like indirect values that are less tangible, as well as I said, that sense of like local place, and also that I guess that narrative and story. People love stories. That's humans. I feel like a key trait of humans is our love of stories and narratives. Like we love that's what we're doing now.
Yeah.
And so if we have a good story about native bees, like Mega Chili Lucifer, the devil bee, like all the comment sections is like, of course it's from Australia. So yeah, I think that can really get interest and then hopefully some funding and like biodiversity, as you said, everyone likes the idea of it, but let's have that as more something that we want to protect rather than just like biodiversity, cool.
Exactly. Why do bees only live for a year? Why do many of these bees only live for a year?
So they live less than a year. They live like 4 to 6 weeks. And
Really?
yeah,
That's
so
short.
very short lifespan. And they might only be active once over the year, or they might be active. And these, sorry, I need a caveat, the adults live this long. The larvae live longer, but you don't see them because they're in the nests.
Okay.
So they'll live 4 to 6 weeks, lay their eggs, and then the larvae will either emerge if they have like a number of generations over their activity season. So some bees are active, the species is active for like end of winter to start of autumn. So that's many generations over there. Some are just like 1 or 2 generations. And it all depends on, I guess, what they're foraging on. So if some bees only forage on plants that only bloom, like we have very seasonal plants here in southwestern Australia, and I'm sure this occurs in many other parts of the world. So if they only forage on plants that are flowering in this period, then there's no point for them being active outside of this period because they've got nothing to feed on. And this is an issue with climate change because we're seeing shifts in the phenology of plants and bees. Both are starting to shift earlier, the bloom period or the activity period, but in general, plants are shifting more. So when their peak is, the bees are just starting to emerge. And then when the bee peak is, it's like when the plants are sort of senescing. So there is, quite a big issue there from a climate change perspective.
Right. So what the larvae is just sitting in a little bee hotel hibernating for a lot of the time. Is that what they're doing?
Yeah. So it's called diapause, and it's essentially like suspending development. The metabolic rate like shuts right down. So they're not using up energy and they're just waiting for the right cues. And we still don't know what the right cues are for many. Overseas, they've got it like down packed for some native bees that they use in like agriculture, where they will, it's called ranching, and they'll put out bee hotels and they'll take the cocoons in and to like control temperature conditions, and they'll be able to like manipulate by changing the temperature, like a cold and then warm, for the bees to emerge when the crop is flowering. But so sometimes it's like change in temperature, or for ground nesting bees, especially in deserts where you don't have like clear times when things are blooming. It's more like after a rainfall, it's probably humidity in the soil or soil moisture. But yeah, there's still so much that we don't really know, but it's like for the few bees that have been studied, it's probably like that shift in temperature or a shift in soil moisture and those sort of things.
Right. Wow. There we go. You have got a wealth of knowledge. There's so much to talk about. I'm sure we could probably go for another multiple hours and just keep learning more and more. But we're going to have to wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming today.
That's all right. It's so good to come back and
touch base again. There's just so much knowledge. If there's people wanting to learn more, listen to our previous episode, which I think is episode 7, episode 6 or 7, even though it was from 7 years ago. I listened to it just recently and there's so many things I've forgotten about and I was just blown away. So definitely listen to that one as well. And everyone can follow you, Bees in the Burbs. Is that still, or it's different now?
Yeah. So I actually changed the name of the Facebook group to the Buzz and Wild Bees because my PhD was on Bees in the Burbs, but now that I finished my PhD, it's everything bees. So it's the Buzz and Wild Bees. Okay. And then my Instagram is at @BeeBabette_performer. That's BEE.BABETTE_performer. And I do have a Patreon as well called the Bee Babette, BEEBABETTE. And that's got like all my publications, myth-busting articles, taxonomy articles, like any magazine publications on there as well.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely check that out. You've done a phenomenal amount of research and really transformed like a big cultural shift within Australia, which is just remarkable to see. You don't see that too often. So
I'm so honoured. Like it's great to have that feedback because like bees are something I care about so much, and getting that feedback that, oh, like all this research and outreach that I'm doing is like actually making a difference. That's, that's my dream.
Yeah. And thank God for that. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.
This production was recorded at the podcast studios in the Media Arts Centre at Murdoch University. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Murdoch University. Any content provided by the hosts and guests are their personal opinions and are not intended to represent the views or opinions of the university, its administration, faculty, or staff. Paramount and Paul.